Ladies and gentlemen, artificial intelligence will be the #1 driver of change and opportunity through the next 20 years. The #1 technological driver of change and opportunity through the next 20 years. Now there's a big statement to start a presentation with, so I better back it up. Then it drafts the letter for you, then it sends it, and then it gets you a refund. Yeah. I love it. There's a whole business there, and it makes money for this guy while he sleeps. And it's just AI. If we can save this nurse, all nurses, just 20% of the time they currently spent documenting, and a lot of them do it in their spare time after their shift, on their own dime, just 20%, that's a $55 billion dividend in the USA alone. Just that. Or it's $55 billion worth of time with patients, any way you want to look at it. What we're seeing today with your ChatGPTs is about 1% of what's coming. 1%. And I'm starting small in this presentation. She actually participates in the meetings with you as another voice in the conversation because she's coaching you and mentoring you. She has a history of the company. She has a history of all of those clients. And then when you're asleep, she keeps making the follow-up calls for you that you need done. She goes and writes up the contracts for you while you're asleep or on vacation or ill, keeps going, in fact does all the work that you wish somebody else could do for you to help in that sales process, and remembers every word that was ever said in every one of those sales calls for the rest of your career. Let me frame it differently, and you'll understand the future of education. What if you, as a teacher in this classroom, had a teacher's assistant, a human one, for every student, right? It's never going to happen, but imagine. What would you do with that? What would you do if an AI gave you pretty much that capability? So every student gets a lesson plan. Every student gets customized tuition. That's a force multiplier. What about this student here? He's obviously smarter than the others. He's looking at airplanes and SR-71 Blackbirds. He'll be working at Gulfstream before you know it, right? He needs an accelerator program. But most of these kids have to be held back by necessity into something closer to the mainstream of where the classroom's at. AI, we haven't begun the journey for how we're going to use it in education to be a force multiplier for teachers. Where can you, when you go back to your offices, where could you use AI to multiply what you do 10 times, or 100 times, or 1,000 times? But we focus on the hardware, and hardware is expensive. AI gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and is almost free, ultimately, with much of what I've been talking about today. So the power is in the software and systems of software. Let me show you a couple of examples to sort of drive this home. This is a favorite one of mine. So there are some robot boats running around Amsterdam right now to collect trash. So if someone blows a red light on River Street here or on Martin Luther King Boulevard, the other vehicles know, slow down. This is going to become as routine as ABS and brake assist and all those things you're seeing on all the new vehicles today. It'll take some time, but populations of vehicles are coming which will all know what all the other vehicles are doing, just like those trash collecting boats. And it'll be really safe. It'll be like an internet of vehicles which self-learns and adjusts. And if one vehicle encounters a patch of black ice on one corner in Colorado at one time of year, it'll remember that, and every other vehicle in the United States will also know that that corner can be dangerous on that day at that time of year for black ice. AI is great at spotting anomalies. So it's now 3.5 seconds per container, which is faster than you can actually push the container through. So they can scan all the containers now, not a sample, all of them. Do that. Port of Savannah, you increase the trustworthiness of the Port of Savannah, you increase the client base, economic payback. There's another system out there that I've seen where they're just sharing data, nothing more, across every service provider in the port, every shipping company, all these guys, all the freight forwarders, all that, just so that they can learn, use AI to learn, to predict more accurately arrivals, departures, when things are going to be there, just like that airport. Because if this idle time of this vessel can be reduced, it's money. That's fuel burn. Instead of 14,000 yellow cabs, you could do the same service levels, and here's the simulation with the actual data. You do the same service levels with 3,000 vehicles. That's an 80% efficiency dividend on transportation. We're learning the language of animals. We are literally in the Caribbean right now using learning by example, machine learning, to learn all of those clicks and buzzing noises that whales make to find what the meaning is. And we're going to be able to talk back to them. We're already talking back to bees. You know those little dances they do in the hive? We've got robo-bees that go back in and we can talk back and send them to look at pollen. We're communicating back for the first time. If we get just a little bit more empathy for all these other creatures we share the planet with through this, that's priceless. In this case, fruit flies and mice. So the auditory connectomes, they call them, that's what the neural networks look like for fruit flies, for memory and retention, and for auditory, and that's from a mouse, that's from the retina. So we're mimicking that, and it's really important because AI uses so much electricity today. So if you're using a lot of AI on your phone, you'll drain your battery real fast. In fact, if you just use the camera on your phone. But if you replace it with what's called a neuromorphic camera, you could run your camera all year on your phone and not drain the battery. We grew brain cells in a petri dish. They coalesce, they form their own organism called an organoid. So they work, they fire, the synapses fire. There's a whole moral discussion about this. But they did it. They hooked it up to hardware, and they did learning by example using the brain cells. So now we've got an AI which is using brain cells as part of the system. And it did language learning, just like the baby that we started with. You're getting equivalence.